What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the series where I have been reading this trilogy by Brandon Sanderson, Mistborn. And after each part, I've been stopping and talking about what's happened and making bold predictions for what's coming next. And you join me on a very smug edition because I'm just about to start essentially the last part of this series. And I feel very smug because I managed to guess that Ruin was going to be in the cave as Reen. Obviously, I knew Reen was there before I made that prediction, so it's not a crazy prediction, but still pretty proud of it. I also knew that Ruin was talking to Vin through her earring, which she hasn't figured out yet. And I just feel really good about it because it's not often you get it spot on. And Spook as well, that Spook was under Ruin's influence. And I don't know, maybe everybody guessed this, but it's not often that I get it right. So welcome to this very smug episode. So I feel I want to start with a pat on my own back. Good job. Good job. So let's start off with Spook's storyline. What has happened? Well, we also discovered that Ruin's influence was on Spook also via the spear or sword that had been stabbed into him. And I had also managed to guess this one, which was awesome. I did not realize that the citizen would also have Ruin's influence inside of him also. So Ruin is really running the show. He's dominating everything, and it's set up for him to be the winning party now. Obviously, our team needs to pull the rabbit out of the hat. And I have to say hats off to Spook because we've all felt like Spook before. We've all felt like we were inconsequential. We've also felt like we weren't important and other people around us were doing big things and we just kind of weren't doing much and we haven't fit in. Whether you felt that with like friends or at work or even just with your family when they were older and you were younger, everyone in some capacities felt like that. So I feel like everybody can relate to Spook a little bit. And he shows it's not what you become, it's who you choose to become and the decisions you choose to make that make you a hero. And he will almost definitely be immortalized. Immortalized, is that a word? He will gather immortality through what he chose to do with his life throughout, but especially in those final moments. I assume he dies. I'm like 99% certain he did. And he is going to be the survivor of the flames, which eventually claimed him, but he'll be a martyr and the people will love him. So Spook has been my favorite character to read in this book. I am a bit disappointed it wasn't the voice of Kelsier, but once the voice of Kelsier was always telling him to kill people and attack people, well, at that point you knew it wasn't Kelsier, because although Kelsier didn't hold back, he wasn't a ruthless killer without any regard for emotion or morals. So, called it, sad about it. So where does that storyline go now? We still have Sazed over there. We still have Breeze over there. I'm not really certain. I'm not sure what the importance of that city is going to be now. I think what that storyline was for was to give us a great storyline with Spook, which was incredible. But I think now we will get some kind of revelation or inspiration from Sazed. I think he's going to manage to take some inspiration from Spook and who he chose to be and how he chose to go about things, even in the face of adversity, like the level of faith that he was able to show. And I think hopefully we get Sazed snapping out of his depression and the apathetic view he's taken on things. So hopefully we see Sazed do what Sazed does best, which is do some awesome research that leads to great success. And I know Sazed has a huge amount of play in this story going forwards, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. And the other storyline, so I think this storyline was the best of what we read here in this section, and the section was called Beautiful Destroyer. And essentially Elend meets Preservation, or what's left of Preservation, and he has this very Elend conversation where he uses logic to give out some questions and to get like yes or no answers. And we learn a few things. So we learn that Preservation definitely doesn't recommend attacking Phaedrex, the city where Vin is captured. He also is like, it gives him a maybe on going back to the capital. He also says that he doesn't think that they can win, but they might be able to survive. which has kind of been a theme of the series anyway. You know, the survivor of the flames, the survivor of Hathsin. Like, surviving is key and important. So those clues, if I could, I would probably be able to know exactly what happens next out of them. We also found out that metals and the mists are like they're definitely related somehow as well. So I have some ideas on what I think is going to happen next. But what's going to happen to Elend next? I think Elend decides to trust Vin to break out of her prison. I think that's going to be Vin's trial alone. So what is Elend going to do? I think Elend is going to figure out what the percentages or what the deepness is and why it's killing people. I think that's on him because he's a logical guy, he's a learned guy. So I think what he's going to do is find a solution, or at least find and identify the problem with the mists. Why are 16% of people dying? Why are some races and types of organisms not dying at all? And I think he's going to figure that out. How he does it, I don't know. Does he link up with Sazed for that research? Potentially. I could definitely see those two working on that together. So that's what I think is going to happen with Elend moving forwards before we get to the final act, where surely everybody comes back together for that. But the most important part of that whole interaction is when the dark-haired, large-nosed body collapses, and we come to find out that was the body that Preservation was using. And this blows my mind because this means a lot. So what does it mean? I'll explain. In my head anyway, obviously I don't know exactly what it means. These are all guesses, but to me, it feels like this means we know Preservation is inside of every living thing. It wanted sentient life. So it appeared it was just using a regular person. Maybe not a regular person, but somebody who was an allomancer, almost definitely. A mistborn, almost definitely. Somebody pure of heart, almost definitely. So that's number one, interesting. Like, I wonder who that person was, and I hope we get to find out more about their story pre-Preservation going into them and post-Preservation going into them as well. So we know one person who has absorbed some mist already. We know the mist itself is the physical representation of Preservation's power. Vin escapes. How does she escape? I do not know. I have a suspicion Yeoman is involved. I think underneath he is actually a good man, but Ruin obviously has a hold over him. So I would think maybe he accidentally gets too close or manages to gift the atium in his head to Vin. Vin uses that atium to escape somehow. Not certain how, but somehow. Once she escapes, she is going to absorb the mists somehow again. There's a lot of somehows here, a lot of guesswork. First, she needs to take the earring out. She needs to figure that out. And it amazes me that she hasn't quite figured out that it's the earring that's allowing Ruin to speak to her at this point. She still thinks that Ruin is just able to speak to her, I believe. So she escapes, she absorbs all the mist, she becomes the next Preservation. She is also the narrator before every chapter, because becoming Preservation, obviously she gets all these godlike powers. She can see all that was and all that will be into the future as well. That is how I think everything ends. How does Sazed tie in, and how does Ferukemi tie in? Because that's the balance between. I don't really know, unless Sazed has... So at the very start of this whole series, I had this idea in the first book that the Lord Ruler was keeping the deepness in the atium. I now believe that the atium is what is called the trust, and it's what the Kandra are looking after on their big steel, under their big steel platform. And that is meant to be the body for Ruin. How does that tie together? I don't know. I just have this pile of atium that I think exists, and I know Ruin needs a body. Atium's a pretty cool metal. I imagine they're both together somehow. So what I'm now thinking is maybe Sazed uses Ferukemi to somehow trap Ruin in a metal. I don't know if that even makes sense, because I'm thinking that the atium is what Ruin's body is made up of. So like, surely Ruin wants to be inside of it. But Sazed has to be involved somehow, because he's the last feruchemist. So maybe he manages to trap Ruin in a different metal that it can't utilize, like atium. Maybe a metal like silver, because silver, we found out very recently, and it was described in great detail, how it's one of the most useless metals. So maybe he manages to put ruin in some silver. Maybe it's the silver underneath. Maybe all the atium was used by the Lord Ruler. I don't know, it's a bit confusing. I feel like what I'm doing is I'm taking these like different things I have left and I'm trying to squash them together. I'm very confident on the Vin mist scenario. I'm very confident on Elend discovering really what the deepness is and those deaths. I'm very confident on Sazed being involved as the last photochemist. He needs to be like the yin and yang, the in between for that, because photochemy is. But how does Ruin defeated? What is the trust? I think it's atium, but how does that tie into it? Basically, I don't really know how Ruin gets defeated. So that's where I'm at. So what else? Only one other thing. At one point, it's said by the narrator that preservation is not creation. Does that insinuate that there is a force out there that is creation? I think so. Maybe creation has something to do with that long named metal thing I was talking about in the last book called like adasontium. Might not be nothing like that, but it was quite similar. How does that tie together? I don't know, but the idea that this cosmere is huge, like that's quite clear. But also, is there a creator? I mean, there must be, right? Here on Earth, we believe in one. A lot of people do, in some form anyway. Everything must have been created in this cosmos somehow. So that is a thought for the future. And that's it. This section has been fast-paced, but the revelations, other than the meeting of preservation, which was really fun, the revelations haven't shocked me because I feel like I actually got a good handle on what I thought was going to happen in this section. And it was more just enjoying seeing it unfold. This next section, I'm much less confident on what the overall solution is going to be for the story. But this part of this book was the most predictable section of the whole trilogy so far. And I was wondering whether you felt the same way. Did you see these twists that I've talked about here coming? Did you see that Reem was going to be Ruin? Did you see that Ruin had been speaking to Vin for the entire duration? Did you realize that Spook had Ruin's hemalurgic spike inside of him? If you did, let me know. If that is a spoiler in some way for the future, please refrain. But I am interested to see how much of it other people manage to guess as well, because this is one of the first times I feel like I've guessed a lot in one go. And been right, is what I mean. I've guessed in every video and been miles off most of the time. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I've done this for The Wheel of Time, a few other series as well, and I'll be doing it moving forwards. I'd love to have you along for the ride. Enjoy the rest of your day.